Time is close at hand.
The opinions of J. Michael McCoy and his guests are not necessarily the opinions of KPOG, any particular religious denomination, or any other theological institution. Thanks for listening to Mac's World Live, Living Free Through Forgiveness, live on KPOG and webcast1live.com.
All right, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock. On the top. I mean, right, well, okay, now it's like 30 seconds late, but it was right at 1 when we started. I just want you to know that. It's the 5th day of the 5th month in the year 2021. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Mac's World Live, Living Free Through Forgiveness. And we are all blessed today to have Desiree with us. For those of you that don't know who Desiree is, look out. She comes on after this show on Wednesdays. And she's extremely knowledgeable, probably too much for an old guy like me, on what we should and shouldn't put in our bodies. And you practice what you preach. I see some of the stuff you put online. You like bake stuff and then show it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you're going to ask somebody to do something, you have to be willing to do it yourself. So I'm not the world's best cook, but I try. My family's all still alive, so, it's good.
Now, you have 3 kids?
4 in my blended family, yeah.
Okay, you have 4 kids.
Yep.
And you'll find out that everything I say is either absolutely sarcastic or I really mean it. Your kids are just good kids. I mean, they're nice, they're polite. Maybe they're not at home, but I don't care. When I see them in Sabbath and stuff like that, they just seem so nice. And that day when you had, was it 2 of your kids on here one day?
Yep. I had my daughters.
Your daughters?
Yep.
You should have just let them talk that day.
That's what I heard.
That was funny to listen to.
It was one of my most popular shows yet. I don't know what that says, but everybody loved it.
So as the next 2 hours go on, we're going to continue the series that you and I started on Monday, and that is digging deep into forgiveness. And, the Lord called me for my ministry to help people learn how to grant and receive forgiveness. And you've heard me say before, my forgiver was broken. I'm not even sure I had a conscience before Jesus mugged me. And so when he said to me that day, I had been praying for months for him to tell me what his will for my life was. And I think you know this story. I was at the Wailing Wall on Christmas Eve in Jerusalem. And I was in tears, and I was saying, because I've been praying to God for like 5 months. I'll give you 5 months to tell me. And however you need to prepare me to hear whatever you say to me. Because I was really afraid he was going to call me into the mission field.
Oh.
I don't even like sleeping in a hotel. I don't do that well. But he used one word, Desiree, and it was forgive. And you can't give away something you don't have. Kind of like you just said, if you're going to cook something and talk to people about it, you got to be able to show it. And so I've spent the last 5 years looking every which way on how to help people forgive. And I'm blessed to have a handful of men. I usually only work with men. It doesn't mean if a woman approaches me about it, I'll give her some foundational stuff and then I'll pass her on to a woman who knows how to do that. But I'm sitting here thinking about a couple of them. One of them was I was walking down the hallway at church, and I heard this person saying my name louder than she should have been. And by the time she caught up with me, she was tearing up, crying, whatever. And I just thought, something horrible's happened, my kids or something like that. It was the wife of a man who she told him that if he doesn't figure it out, their marriage was going to be over. And he heard me talk one day in a Bible study about forgiveness. And it struck a chord with him. And he said, I think I need to learn how to forgive. There had been an incident in their marriage where unforgiveness was a lot easier than forgiving. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't me. It's Holy Spirit. It's God just using us. But to this day, when and if I see her, she always winks at me and said, "You saved my marriage." And I always say, "Jesus saved your marriage." Okay, the both of you. And so that's why I think helping people understand forgiveness is vital. I just learned the other day, I bought this book by Bruce Wilkinson called 70 times 7. And it's actually a DVD series that you can buy and as a small group go through. But I did not really understand that unforgiveness was a sin.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, because if we don't forgive, we can't be forgiven.
Right.
So, and the only thing that's really going to separate us from eternity is sin. So,
I mean, I
qualifies.
And you know, how many times did I grow up saying the Lord's Prayer? At least every Sunday, because I was a Sunday goer. And when I was young, when I'd go to sleep at night, you know, we'd pray. But forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Yeah.
I really thought that was by walking through my neighbor's field. Because when you grow up in a farm country, there's always a sign that says no
trespassing. None.
And so when Jesus spoke those words to me that Christmas Eve, I knew that there was a very, very deep well that I was going to have to climb down. And he's really, really been good to me. Not just helping me forgive others, but forgiving myself. You know, if you've got a messed up relationship, whether it's a marriage or with a child or a parent or a best friend, if you think for one moment that it's not a 50-50 deal, you're wrong. Especially if you have a relationship with Jesus. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in the world of forgiveness, we say you got to stay on your side of the street. You know, if I was going to ask for your permission to forgive you or whatever, I couldn't say, well, I'm really sorry that I did that, Desiree, and I shouldn't have done it. But you know,
Yep.
if you wouldn't have said that,
Yep.
see, but is a verbal eraser.
It is, and it makes me think also of an example. I mean, words are powerful when you're apologizing, and everybody interprets things differently. So a similar phrase that I'm thinking of along with the but is, you know, if you're apologizing to someone, instead of just saying you're sorry for what you're sorry for, another term, I never really thought about it till someone took offense to it, is I'm sorry you feel that way. So you're not apologizing or taking ownership per se for what you did or is perceived that you did in that situation. You're just sorry that they feel that way.
Okay, that's an interesting topic. So if I were to say to somebody, I'm sorry that's how you took it, that's a but, right? It isn't my fault, that's the way you took it.
Kind of. I mean, if you started out with, I did not mean to hurt your feelings, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, that was not my intent, that would be a better way of saying, I'm sorry, that's the way you took it.
Well, how about this? If I had known you would be offended by that it would erase what I was trying to accomplish, and that is to give a basis to recreate our relationship no matter what it is, I would have never, ever said that. And I'm very sorry. Please forgive me.
Yes. Better.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those people that say, well, you know, I was really kind of a jerk to you and I shouldn't have been that way. But you know, Frank does that all the time. But you know. All right.
Taking responsibility is hard.
Well,
You got to practice it. It's not something that comes naturally. I really feel like you have to practice it.
Yeah. You know, when you say that, you know what comes to my mind? It was Jesus on the cross saying, forgive them, Father, because they know not what they do.
Yeah.
Because he had every right to say, these stinkers, wait till I come back in 3 days. Yeah, who's going to have the last laugh then? But he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He didn't say they don't realize I'm your son. They don't realize that I'm the Messiah. I'm going to remember that. I think that's a good one. You know, Jesus had 7 different lines that he had by the time they put him on the cross and by the time he took his last breath. And if you look at them, they're all phenomenally powerful. All of them. Just, they all drip into the gospel. If you wanted to tell somebody the gospel, you could take those 7 lines, those 7 paragraphs or whatever.
And do that.
And they would understand who Jesus was. I hope so, at least.
Well, sounds like a study.
Oh, no. Another topic on radio. Yeah.
Well, or maybe personally at home. If if you have a pencil and a piece of paper, write it down. It might be a study that you come back to later.
Yeah. Well, and I don't claim to know how other people's lives are affected by God. I just know my own. But when that kind of thing comes around, what you just said, well, that'd be a good study. Well, now it's going to be. Because I know you didn't say that without a little help from the Holy Spirit.
Because I need to study it too.
Yeah, we all do.
It's where it's coming from.
So one of the things we've learned here in the last couple of days is, the following. I'm going to read this for you if I can.
Okay,
This is
sure,
from
please.
Matthew 18. And the master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. This is the story of the talents. Mm-hmm. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you from your heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. And then whoever wrote this goes on to say, it is comforting to know our heavenly Father only wants the best for our lives. Therefore, he will do all in his power. All, that's the operative term there. All in his power to keep us from harboring unforgiveness in our hearts. That is 5 big words. Harboring unforgiveness in our hearts. God knows the sin of unforgiveness will choke the very life out of our souls. That's pretty powerful.
It is powerful.
And I can relate to somebody who says, "Well, I'm not going to forgive them. After what they did to me, I'm not gonna do that. I'll never forgive that person." And when I used to hear that from somebody, I'd say, "Well, I get it. I understand." But now I feel that harboring unforgiveness in their hearts, man, that's not good.
It's not good because it's eating themselves up more than the person they're not forgiving for the most part. I mean, you hear it. Well, it's like, what is that they say? It's like drinking poison and hoping it kills the other person. So, I mean, you've heard that. We've heard that before. But it's just so true. I mean, the simplest things are the most powerful things. It's not rocket science. And if you're laying away at night, Mac, grinding your teeth over something, odds are the person you're mad at is not. They're sleeping. And it's your health you're tearing apart, and your spiritual life you're putting on the line, and they're not even thinking twice about it. So who is it really hurting? Yeah,
I always say that I'm letting them live rent-free between my ears.
In your brain space, yes.
I also say this, and I think I believe it, that actually forgiving someone is very selfish of us because we're really doing something for us. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're abiding in God. We're crawling under his arms and saying, I'm going to let you take care of this. I'm going to give this to you, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a thought that I've pondered in my mind a little bit, because so I'm divorced. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm divorced. And I was stopped in my tracks one day just thinking about, because I pray for my ex-husband and his wife. But when I forget what sparked it, but when I stop and think about the things that I was praying for, I really had to ask myself, was I really praying for him, or was I praying for me? Was I praying for something because I wanted that behavior? So, I wanted, a certain environment for my kids, or I wanted this, or I wanted that. Is it really him that I'm praying for, or is it still me that I'm praying for? But I want God to play it out through him, and then feel like I'm praying for him, because then if I can pray for him, then I've gotten farther on the road of forgiving him.
But you're so right. And what you just said, everybody goes through with whoever it is they're trying to forgive. When I got divorced, it was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing because I didn't want it. And I have to drive by a building that we owned, and she's in now. And I'd go by that building, and I didn't like what it brought up in my head. So 3 years ago, here, you can tell I'm the Lutheran here. 3 years ago, for Lent, I shut the radio off, got off the phone. If somebody was sitting in the car, asked them to simply be quiet. And I prayed out loud for God to give her peace, joy, everything she's ever asked for, comfort, peace, everything. And it worked. It took a little while, but it worked. Because you're right. What I really started saying in the beginning is, I hope you make her feel like she made me feel. I hope those kids see who's really, knocking the ball over here and not doing the right thing with their dad or their grandpa or whatever. But that's what Satan would say. That's not what God would say. So it's bold of you to be able to explain that, but it means you got it figured out.
I mean, and it's not that I was praying for bad things. But, the things that I was praying for, the ulterior motive is because he better show my kids that he can do that, so that he can hold it together, that he can da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's not really what it's about.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
And that's not
see
what
it
it's
on
about.
the paper right now.
So it's not like I was, wishing death on him or praying bad things. But again, my prayers in and of themselves, even though I called myself praying for him, they were more so for me.
I don't have it in front of me. I forgot my Bible today, but in my book, one of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 31:32, and that's the verse where it says, "They will be my people, and I will be their God, and I will create a covenant with them," et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end, Jeremiah says that, "And I will forgive their trespasses and never again remember them."
That's the trick.
Yeah. Well, but don't you think that's God speaking through Jeremiah telling us it's possible to forgive and forget?
Yes. I mean, and we hope it's possible when it applies to us.
Yeah.
But then, putting that into practice when it's applying to someone else, because the other thing that we always hear all the time too is, well, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget.
Yeah. And I know we can't always do exactly as God would hope us to do because we have sinful nature. But I think that's one we got to work on.
You got to practice it.
Yeah. You got to, for me, I've had people in my life who at one time or another have done me wrong. And I will, even before I knew Jesus or forgiveness, I would welcome them back into life. Usually it was somebody that I had to fire or they quit. And I would welcome them back in. And it was a strange feeling for me because I wasn't doing it for me. I wanted it to be over. I wanted to move on. I wanted to go back to the way things were. And some people say you can never go home. Maybe not, but you can always build a new one.
It's true.
And I'm blessed to have people in my life that at one time or another probably kicked them out. Or they kicked me out, one of the two. And that really is that's a sense of the Holy Spirit abiding in us. Because we're absolutely doing what we know God's will is for us when it comes to those things.
And sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. And that's the hard truth.
Yeah, I know. You're right. But now you bring up an interesting point because you can't fake it with Jesus.
You can't.
So,
but you can fake it.
He laughs at you.
He does. But if that's what it takes to move from a head knowledge to a heart knowledge as a human being, then sometimes it's just what you have to do. Yeah. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I think
because it takes time sometimes. Some people it's like this, and for the rest of us, it's time.
Yeah. Well, and isn't it a gift the Holy Spirit grants to us to settle into Him so He can take care of some of these things that we just can't?
Yes, if we let Him. Yeah. If we take it from Him and say, okay.
I've always said Jesus didn't die on the cross to forgive the guy who cut out in front of me today, or the person who said something bad to me, or my neighbor who did this or did that. That's the simple stuff. Jesus died on the cross to help us forgive the things that we can't forgive. We were created that way, but sinful nature has changed that. You know, I'm a big believer in spiritual warfare, and the devil's just whispering in my ear, yeah, but you're not going to forget that, are you? Come on. After what was said, after all that was done, you don't need to forget it.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And then they did it more than once.
Oh, gee, many.
You know, the first time, shame on them. The second time, shame on you. I mean, that just fosters that. And for that, I'll have to say, I get it. Because at what point, you know, at some point you have to wise up. But then how do you balance the whole forgiveness thing with wising up? How does that work?
For me, I got to give it to him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking earlier before we got on the air. A year ago, I started a new career with a company here in town. And this had been the first time since 1983 that I'd worked for somebody else but me. And my first few months was exactly that. Well, I just got to give that to Jesus, and he'll work that out, because there's no way I emotionally know how to handle that. You know, somebody who's just being mean or whatever they're doing. But I mean, I think that's why he died on the cross. He didn't die on the cross for the little stuff.
I don't think so. I would agree with that.
Yeah, he died on the cross for the big stuff. One of the things that it says in this book, and one of these days I hope to have a 4-part series, and it would probably be something that we would do 4 evenings over the course of a month maybe, or something like that. Watch these DVDs and go through this workbook. And at the end of each lesson, it's kind of like the Sabbath study, because it has day 4, day 5, day 6, and then you wrap it up on day 7, then you start again with the new lesson. But at the end, they have this little zing, which is supposed to pull on your heartstrings and make you realize that maybe you don't know everything you thought you did. And in this lesson, it says, it's called the multiplier effect.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. Are you experiencing God's loving discipline because there is a person you haven't forgiven? Now I'm just going to push pause there for a second. So you're telling me that maybe my prayers don't even get on the table of consideration because my unforgiveness is stopping God from blessing me.
That's heavy.
Well, you know who Rick Warren is? Mm-hmm. Rick Warren wrote a sermon once, and I listened to sermons a lot. And he said, one of the things I ask people when they give me that line, well, he never answers my prayers. I wanted my grandfather to live, and my grandfather died, so he doesn't listen to my prayers. And Rick Warren wrote out very, very carefully, but there were 3 things that we needed to do to have God answer a prayer that big. 1, surrender. 2, study our Bible. And 3, have a small group of people we are accountable to. Because God will use all 3 of those things, our humility through surrendering, our study, not just our reading, but our studying of the Bible, and those people that we've given permission to, hey, you can call me out on that. And if we can do those things, kind of like maybe finishing your freshman year in college, now you get to move on to be a sophomore. You get to take, I don't know what classes you'd take as a sophomore. Give me some math class. Calculus.
There you go.
What a silly thing that is.
It isn't it, though?
I'm going to use that all my life. Calculus. Yes, I've got a PhD in calculus.
This sounds like a conversation I have with my children. We can't teach our kids to balance a checkbook in school, but we can teach them calculus.
Yeah. But, you know, they don't let us go to our sophomore year. Or probably even a better example, they don't let us go to college if we don't graduate high school.
Nope.
And it's a lot different today than it was years ago. But School prepares us. God prepares us to do something that we're not capable of doing. But he walks us through that. And then all of a sudden, wow, once again, you can't give something away you don't have.
You can't.
So in the effect here, it says, are you experiencing God's loving discipline because there is a person you haven't forgiven? What is one act of obedience you can do today to end the difficulty that you are experiencing? What is the one act of what is the one act of obedience you can do today to end the difficulty you are experiencing, the difficulty of forgiving? You said it earlier. Pray for them.
Pray for them.
Genuinely pray for them.
There's the kicker, the word genuinely.
Yeah.
The other thought that popped in my head is admitting you don't want to. And I think that's okay.
I like that.
I think that's okay. You have to, because God already knows.
Yeah.
So just fess up to it. And then once you do that, you can ask for the help to help you get to turn it over, like you said, because you're like, I just have to turn it over. And I'm like, well, Mac, I just don't know how to turn it over.
Right.
I'm trying, but I'm not, because I'm still got it. I still got it. I'm trying to give it away, but it's like glued. It won't release.
It's like Spider-Man. It comes out, but it comes back.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So using that terminology, I never thought of this, but this is good. So I used to have to drive by this building, and it hurt. Mm-hmm. Every day it hurt.
Yep.
Twice, 4 times a day, it hurt. So I used Lent. Used is maybe the wrong word, but I took advantage of a time that we're supposed to change something we're doing. Everybody says, you give up eating beef, or you stop smoking, or you lose weight. No. Let's really give up something. Mm-hmm. And unforgiveness towards somebody. But then, as you said, God used that road that I had to drive down to remind me to pray for them. So before it was, oh, here we go again. And now it was, oh, good. And you know what? I still do that today.
And that's good.
Yeah. Well, I have to.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's the other thing I think we need to say clear. There is no beginning and ending to unforgiveness. It is an ongoing character. What's the opposite of a character defect? It's a godly characteristic.
Yep. It's now you would ask me, because I don't have it, but it'll come to me 5 minutes from now when we're not talking about it anymore.
You interrupt it anytime when you think about it. Because I God blessed me with the gift of discernment, but I used to use it the wrong way. Figure out something, and then I'd point it at you and, stick my finger in your wound. Now I use it to understand how I've made other people feel that way. And when I feel that wound that I used to cause people to have, it's a lot easier for me to want to forgive. I mean, why can't forgiveness be a party? Why can't it be this wonderful, wonderful thing? Why can't we have a party on the anniversary? Why can't we have balloons in the front yard that said, I forgive? I think you can get them for $1 a piece out at, the dollar store. Because, Jesus celebrated whatever it was that he was healing. When he healed Lazarus and brought him back, it was get up. Now, I'm going to use my language, not Jesus's necessarily, but it was like, hey, old man, get up, let's go. You're just sleeping. Mary Martha, stand there and watch this. Come on, let's go. When he saw Zacchaeus in the tree, he knew what Zacchaeus was doing up there. Zacchaeus didn't know Jesus knew. So what does Jesus do? Hey, Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house for dinner tonight. We're going to have a party. And in the process of celebrating, you're going to, as Jesus said, salvation will come to your home tonight. Maybe we should have forgiveness parties.
That's a thought.
these kids are doing these reveal the gender parties with pink or blue or whatever. Maybe we ought to have doves or white balloons that represent something that we are truly going to give over to him. Going to let it go. Just let it go. And then every time the devil whispers in our ear, oh, you're not going to forgive that. You don't have to. That was really bad. We can remember those balloons. Hey, we gave it to Jesus.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that I say that would be awesome. And at the same time, I just kind of like feel the tension in my shoulders because I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be so hard. Because I think part of it is almost redefining justice. Like, what is our, this why, I mean, isn't that why, I mean, when I think about why I have a hard time, if I have a hard time forgiving someone, and for the most part, I don't. It's just like what we would call some of those really big, hairy offenses. And I know to God it's all the same. But to us, we have levels of how we've been slighted or offended. And the really bad ones, you're like, dude, what the heck? I mean, and nothing is going to happen. Nothing, that person is not going to have to make, amends whatsoever. They just get to cut up and be mean and destroy lives and then just carry on. Where is the justice in that? I want justice. And I think that's what it comes down to. And it's so, but I have to stop and think of who was really slighted here and where does the justice need to happen? And if that person can come back around and you allow God to let you forgive them, if they can admit to what they did wrong and allow themselves to forgive themselves, then Jesus wins. But it's so hard to get past the justice that I want versus the justice that Jesus deserves, because that's really what it's circling back around to. But it's hard to get past myself to see that. And I'm saying it because I'm talking through it right now because this is a good conversation. But when I'm just sitting at home and I'm ticked off for whatever reason because I feel like I'm good, I'm moving on, and then like that, something takes me back, I'm not concerned about if Jesus has justice. I want my justice.
Desiree's my guest today. It's 30 minutes past the hour on the 5th of May, God's year 2021. So you brought up something very important. For you or for us, I don't mean to put this just on you.
Yeah.
Do we need to have that person come and say, I accept your forgiveness, or please forgive me, I was wrong? Because that never happens.
It doesn't, but I think on some level, I think we kind of do sometimes.
Well, that's what repent is.
Yeah.
Repent is taking this thing and turning around and giving it to Jesus and saying, we're going to do our best not to do this again. But as you sat there and talked about it, oh my heavens, wouldn't I love that conversation? Please forgive me for what I did. And I'll tell you where I get stuck. This is so bad to say, but it's true. So I went to somebody one time and I said, I forgive you for what you did to me. And I want you to know that genuinely. You know what they said back? What'd I do? I don't remember doing anything. What the heck? Why do you need to forgive me? What did I do? And I don't think that person and I ever got past that. We did put it aside and not talk about it again. But you're right. And see, the Bible teaches us that, what's the line? That God will bring justice to everything, or God will take care of it in the end, or whatever it is.
Sure.
I'm just not sure I like that a lot.
Because A, it requires patience. B, it doesn't require you to be involved. It does, but it doesn't because we're letting him do it. But I'll tell you what, and I have to admit, some of the hardest conversations is where I've had to tell my 6-year-old, my 7-year-old, my 12-year-old, my teenager, I'm sorry because I lost my temper. I'm sorry that I raised my voice. I should not have done that. And as parents, I feel that it's important that we do that because otherwise, how are our kids going to learn? But it's just important as a human being. And again, like I said, practice. And Even over the years, I've had a lot of practice because I can lose my temper, right? And so, and not say, I'm sorry that I yelled at you, but you should have. No, just to say, I'm sorry that I raised my voice at you. And it's hard, even when they're 7, to be the one to be like, I'm really sorry that I yelled at you. I should not have done that. And it's still hard. It doesn't matter, because just the whole act of doing it, it's contrary to our natural self.
Yeah. It's contrary to, let's put it the other way. It fits real good with sinful nature.
Yes.
We don't need to do that.
Yes.
Matt, who's a good friend of mine, loved this man, said, when I said character defects, he says noble or honorable characteristic.
Yes.
That would be good.
Good character traits.
Yeah.
Respectable character trait. I mean, yeah, it's either a good character trait or it's a character flaw or a character defect.
You know, you take me back to a time in my life before Jesus mugged me, and I don't think I was capable of saying I'm sorry without blaming somebody else. Let's both pick it up and it'll be 50-50. No, sometimes it's not. I did that. Mm-hmm. I misunderstood what you meant. I misunderstood what you said. One of the things, you've probably heard me say this, one of the gifts that Jesus gave me when he mugged me is he took away, back up. He taught me that being offended was a choice. And why was I choosing to be offended? Why? I'm not saying I'm not offended, but why was I choosing to be offended? And I'll be honest with you, I don't get offended very often anymore because I know it's a choice. And quite frankly, I'm not interested in using a lot of good, positive energy that I could be given to Jesus and other people.
It's true. It is a choice. But I think sometimes you can be offended for good reason. I think so. I mean, and I think even... I even think Jesus got offended, like when he was in the temple and he saw all of the vendors there and they were selling things on the Sabbath in his house. He was offended.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to call that, righteous offense, but I think there are times where you can be offended and be justified in that feeling. Not many, maybe, but there are times that you can do that.
Well, see, one of the things that I learned was as a talk show host, if I'm getting my butt kicked on a topic, all I have to say is, Desiree, that offends me. Why would you say that to me? And most of the time, you're going to say, oh, Mac, I'm sorry. Let's change subjects and move on. And inside, the devil and I are dancing a jig.
Because I stopped.
Because, it stopped.
Yeah.
And now if somebody says, well, that's offensive, I say, why do you choose to be offended?
Well, there you go. And then again, it probably stopped right there, too, because they don't know what to say.
Oh, my, oh, my, oh, my.
Oh, my goodness. All these things we're learning today.
Well, but they're important.
Yes.
What you said a minute ago was really awesome. By telling our children we're sorry and that we shouldn't have, and it's not really sorry. It's correcting our behavior and showing them that correcting your behavior feels good to everybody in the room. How do you feel when mom comes up and says, I shouldn't have done that? You're a good kid. I love you. I'm going to try not to do it again. Mom loves you. I mean, you feel that inside because not only did they feel that you shouldn't have done that, and they want the J word too, the justice, but you realized it and you gave them that gift as a parent or a mom.
And, and I think that just brings me back to your point of, do we need to hear that? And maybe, it's two different things to say, I forgive you, but sometimes even if you don't finish it with a, will you forgive me? If you have a sincere apology, I feel like it's implied, will you forgive me? Well,
okay, so we were talking about staying on our side of the street. What if we were to say, I need to forgive myself for reacting poorly and making you feel bad about something you said. So please allow me to forgive myself for making you feel bad when it really wasn't your deal. It was mine.
That's a good point.
Is there a but in there and I'm just not saying it?
I don't know if there's a but I guess I'm struggling with Is that something you need to ask permission for?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things... Okay, so push pause. Are you familiar with Wild at Heart, that ministry?
I am not familiar with that one.
So John Eldridge created a ministry about 20 years ago called Wild at Heart. And originally it was aimed at men. Now his wife has picked up the female side of it. And I'll be darned if I can remember what that is. Maybe Matt can tell me it. But it's a great name. And it has a Bible study and everything else. One of the things it teaches us is to ask permission to say something I know you don't want to hear. And what I heard when I learned that was that's how you tell someone in love something they don't want to hear, because they give you permission. If you said to me, Mac, I need your permission to tell you something I don't think you want to hear. If I give you that permission, it's on me, not you. And if you say that to me and I say, no, I don't give you that permission, then you just be quiet. Because I really want you to tell me, but I'm trying to be a boob about it. And you say, no, you told me, you said, can I have permission? And I said no. And then, and I've had this experience, all right, well, I changed my mind. I gave you permission. No. It's not that easy. You got to help me understand what permission means. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to hear what I'm about to tell you in love rather than criticism?
See, and that's a difference.
Oh, well, yeah.
Words are powerful, and how you key things up can make a big difference on how it's received.
Presentation it's so hard, though. I mean, why? It just seems like we have to work so hard to just say it the right way.
We do. And then throw forgiveness in on top of that, and oh my gosh, but then think of what's at stake.
You know, I'm going to go back to that thing I said a minute ago. You and I should plan a forgiveness party down at Raccoon River and invite whoever wants to come, and a secret place that they would write whom they're forgiving. Maybe it's a letter that we throw into a fire or something like that, and then we let the balloons go.
All right. I think we should do it.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. But it's gutsy for somebody to show up and do that, because I know you would, and I would. I'd make sure they knew the covenant they were making with God. Ooh, there's a big word. That if I'm going to give this to you, I need to let it go.
I need to let it go. But I think I'm going to put a but in there.
There's a but. I heard the but. But.
I'm putting the but. I'm putting the but, and this is a big but. But, God, I'm going to let this go. I may need your help to do it.
Well, sure.
And that, I mean, so, because people might be like, well, if I release this balloon and I still haven't fully forgiven, then what did I just do? So, you know, it's not necessarily that forgiveness, boom, it happened just right then and there, but you're making the commitment to let it go. You're saying, I don't want to harbor this anymore. I'm going to let it go, however long that letting go process takes.
But you just said the magic word.
But
we're asking God. We're saying, Jesus, I just can't handle this. I don't know how to do this.
Yes.
So I invite you in. I give you permission. Please.
Yes.
Please come and help me.
I want to have that forgiveness party.
Yes.
I want to have that. And maybe, you know, I think that's what a lot of people need.
They need an event.
They just need to have that opportunity to say, okay, I didn't know how to do this before, but I'm here. I've got my balloon. You're showing me the way, and I am now going to take that step in making that commitment to say, I want to release this.
And I can't do it without you. See, that's
the key.
That's the key. You're right. You are, and it's the word, surrendering. You're surrendering that unforgiveness to God to show you how important it is that we forgive.
Yep. So I'm not going to say this verbatim, but it just reminds me of what Martin Luther King said. One of his quotes is that I choose love because hate's just too big a burden to bear.
Yeah.
I mean, and really, I choose forgiveness because
Unforgiveness.
unforgiveness is too big of a burden to bear.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up. So I'm sitting in, I like to go to other churches, whether they're Sabbath churches or whether they're, Sunday churches. I just enjoy, and I sit in the back and I'm quiet. I just want to experience worship. And I was in one day, and the pastor, actually a priest, asked this question: who do you hate? And he gave us some time to think about it. No. You're not done thinking about it yet, he said. Who do you hate? And it was at that moment, Desiree, I realized that I no longer hated anybody. I just didn't. I'm not trying to be holier than thou, but
Yeah.
I couldn't answer that question. I don't hate anybody, because it's what you just said about Martin Luther King. It just takes so much energy to hate.
It does.
And sometimes I think Jesus is just yelling at us, hey, I want that energy. Mm-hmm. I want that time that you spend with hating these people. Why can't you give that to me? You and the devil are hating this person, and he's teaching, and that's time away from me, and I am a jealous God
He is.
of the time that you don't spend with me. Mm-hmm. All right. It's about 1:15. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break, play a couple of songs maybe for you. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Desiree's going to come over and sit in this chair, because now she's going to, she's going to just pow me on my eating. I can just hear it right now. I should have brought you a big brat covered in sauerkraut and pickles and ketchup and no. Okay.
No.
All right. It is a Wednesday. It is the 5th day of May in the Lord's year 2021. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and if I haven't told you lately, I love my job, and I couldn't do it without you. For Desiree and Mac, we'll be back in just a few minutes here on webcast1live.com and KPOG Grimes, West Des Moines.
All right.
excited. We're almost ready to go to Jerusalem. Father says we'll be leaving in a day or two now. Uncle Daniel, how did you know that the king would let the Israelites go back to Jerusalem? I mean, how did you know several years ago? My father says you've been saying for years that just about this year we could go back. How do you know? How did you...
Wait. I heard you. Oh, how did I know? I knew because Jeremiah the prophet told us so. He said that we...